guys? Welcome to the first episode of the Mufasa Sports Clubs. I am your host, Mufasa, and if you are a fan of anything about basketball and soccer, if you like in depth breakdowns of what's going on, the games, and what's going on within those two spheres, you are in the right place. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it among your community. Let's build the best community ever on YouTube together. And today we are going to be discussing the NBA ratings going down. We are going to be giving our opinion on the tanking issue happening within the league, and we are also be discussing the recent firings of NBA coaches and what's been going on with these front offices. So once again, guys, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it. Um, First thing first, the NBA ratings going down. This has been a major topic of conversation throughout the whole NBA season, and there's been different opinions about the reasons behind, you know, the ratings going down or the lack of attraction by the fans for the NBA at the moment. And I personally think the main reason why this is happening is the referees. Guys, nobody comes to watch the referees when somebody goes to a game or turns on the TV to watch a game. And these referees have actually become very sensitive and taking things too personal when refereeing these games. I have several examples that I'm gonna bring out of these refs really like messing up the games and the vibes, and I caught myself shutting down games that I was watching just because these refs have been getting on my nerves, and they need to get away from being too personal when refereeing these games. If you're a ref and you cannot take a player yelling sporadically on you or yelling at you, you shouldn't be refereeing these games because there's a psychological aspect of the game, and there's a lot of testosterone involved in the NBA. So you have to be able to take that at some point. Yes, if they get over the line, I understand why you could give them a tech, but you can't just throw a tech at a player right after their first or second quote unquote misbehavior. This is also taken away from the game being played with passion. And one simple example that happened lately, for instance, is Luka Doncic and the Lakers. I can't remember the game exactly right off the top of my mind. I think it was actually the first game of the back-to-back that the Lakers just had with the Oklahoma City Thunders, where Luka gets ejected because he scores a point, he scores a basket, and is going back on defense and is talking to a fan, and the ref actually believes or thinks that Luka is actually talking to him, gives him a second technical foul, and ejects him from the game. And this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. Yes, Luka has a tendency of complaining to the refs and yelling at the refs and all that, but you can't use prior history and your sensitivity to go ahead and eject a player, let alone a player of Luka's caliber, from a game just because he has been saying things that you thought he's talking to you about. And even if he was talking to you, you gotta be able to realize that you already gave him a technical foul, and a second technical foul is gonna result to him being ejected from the game. These are the psychological elements that I'm referring to when I'm saying a ref should be taking all these in consideration before ejecting a player. If you know you already gave him a tech, you got to take that in mind before you do decide to give him a second tech and therefore eject him from the game. So this is an example of these refs, in my opinion, abusing of the power to basically screw the game up. And again, nobody came to watch the ref. Nobody cares about the refs' feelings when we watching these NBA games. We want to see the players and the players only. So another example of why I think these games have become so quote unquote boring is A player is getting now text for hanging on the rim, and this is one of the dumbest rules that I've seen in a while in the NBA, guys. Tell me why, if a player dunks a basket and hangs on the rim for a couple of seconds, he should be awarded with a technical foul. I just don't get it, because one, it doesn't stop the play. If the other team wants to go on a fast break and score on a 4 or 5 on the other end of the game, of the basket, let the coaches and the teams deal with the players that usually hang on the rim when they score a basket. Now, if they're hanging for like 10, 15 seconds, I can understand. But if a player made a great play and a great dunk and wants to hang on the rim for 2, 3 seconds, maybe 5, while he's basically expressing his joy and emotion because he had a great play, let it be. You can't just like shut a player down because he was hanging on the rim after a great play. I just don't. I'm not a fan of that, and I think that takes the emotion away from the game. It's the same thing um, for players that make great plays and are talking a little bit of trash. This is part of the game. This is part of what makes basketball great. They have to be able to talk trash. They have to be able to show their emotions. And I understand if it gets the NBA doesn't want this to become physical, where there's altercations and things of that nature. But you can let it happen up until they get physical, and if a player touches another player, then you could stop the game, or eventually proceed with a technical foul or an ejection. But talking trash, hanging on the rim, displaying emotions when making a great play, that is part of the game. That is what we take our money and go to watch a game for. This is why you sit down on a Saturday night and watch a game. You want to see guys like Anthony Edwards like display emotions, Ja Morant display emotions, Steph Curry and all these superstars display emotions when they make great plays. And them being afraid of getting a technical foul when they make these plays, or getting discouraged when they get those technical fouls, is really taken away from the game as well. And I really think this is something that the NBA needs to really take in consideration and watch and try to address. I personally think it also should be uh, um, how can I say it, a sanction system in place where referees get penalized for bad games that they have. And if it's fines that they have to pay as well, it may not be as expensive as players' fines, but there has to be some type of reprimandation for referees screwing up games as well. It's too easy to just come out with the 2 minutes report after the game and maybe acknowledge that there was a mistake. No, that's too easy. And players have to be aware. You can't just do it behind closed door. Players have to be aware of the fact that these referees have been, penalized and held accountable for what they basically did. I remember last year, I'm a Sixers fan, but I remember a screwed up game last year when the Clippers came in town playing the Sixers, and Kelly Oubre basically went crazy, cussing out the referees and Nick Nurse as well. But this was such an important game because the referee comes out after the game and basically acknowledges that he screws up the game, but we lost the game, and that was a game that ended up counting 4 playoff seedings and possibly a deep playoff run for my team. And I'm not just saying this because it's the Sixers, but this is just the reality of the game and where we at the moment. And I think refs should also be held accountable for their performances and penalized when they don't deliver a great performance. And again, a public sanction, not just something behind closed doors. So these are the couple of things why I think the NBA ratings are going down. These refs are just not letting the players, showing their emotions when they're playing, and I think that's just ridiculous in my opinion. Of course, the 3 point percentages and every single team now shooting threes like crazy. All this because of Steph Curry and his greatness is also part of it. But I think that's more so like a minor um, reason as opposed to the ones that I mentioned before. But it is, I'm not gonna just dismiss it. I think it is also part of the problem. But this is a problem that could be solved down the line, especially with coaches realizing that these players are going crazy now with those threes. I literally just saw Tyler Hero a couple of games ago going for a fast break and literally stop and pull up a three while the basket was wide open and he could have just gone and get a two point conversion and there was still enough time for them to come back in the game. So this is where we are in the NBA right now, and these are, in my opinion, the reason why people are no longer that excited about games. Let these guys show emotion. Let them talk trash, and let us be excited when two players are talking trash and they meeting in 2 weeks, and we're like, oh, we can't wait for them to come back and show emotions again. So um, now we are going to be talking about the firing happening in the NBA in these past week or 2 weeks before the playoffs. I have no idea what these front offices are doing, and unless you tell me that there's a personal issue between some players and the coaches, or some players or some coaches and the front office that cannot wait until the end of the season, there is no valid reason or whatsoever besides what I just mentioned to fire these coaches right before the playoffs. I do not understand why Taylor Jenkins and Michael Malone get fired a week before the playoffs. That makes absolute no sense or whatsoever, in my opinion. Taylor Jenkins was the coach of the Memphis Grizzlies with a fifth seed in the Western Conference. He had a 44-29 record when he got fired by the Memphis Grizzlies. Ever since he got fired, the Grizzlies are now fighting for a playing spot. And I'm not saying that they were playing a great brand of basketball or that they were going to win a championship, but this is a coach that has been in place for such a long time and has gone through preseason, training camp, the whole regular season, prepping for the playoffs, and now you fire him, expecting what in the playoffs is what I'm saying. I personally think when you do something like that, you're basically forfeiting your playoffs hopes because it's too rushed for an assistant coach to come in and make a great impact in the playoffs when he was not in charge throughout the regular season. It can still happen, but I just don't think this is the best approach. And this is where I have to call out front offices because, whatever that is happening that is pointing you to fire this coach now, what about just waiting until the end of the season to make it happen? And again, like I said, if it's a personal issue where people are not seeing eye to eye and cannot cohabitate or collaborate up until the end of the season and the playoffs, then, of course, they, for the most part, they're not going to come out and literally explain what the issues were for the firing. They might just give, a random explanation. But unless these are the issues, I don't understand why something like that will happen. And it's the same thing with Michael Malone with the Denver Nuggets. I think it's really disrespectful from the Nuggets front office. And their case is even crazier because they ended up firing the general manager, Calvin Booth as well. But I can't understand. I can't fathom the fact that the Nuggets were the fourth seed in the West when Michael Malone got fired. They had a 47-32 record with Jamal Murray missing a lot of games. Nikola Jokic being injured for a couple of games as well throughout the season. And that's the same thing with Taylor Jenkins in Memphis. Ja Morant missed some time. Jared Jackson Jr. missed some times. Desmond Bain missed some times. And these coaches are held accountable and fired while they have key players missing games, and they're still in a great spot for contention in the West. Not necessarily like winning the West, but the team was still respectively fourth and five for Malone and Taylor Jenkins when they get fired. I can't understand that. That is just crazy to me. And in Michael Malone's case, this man brought the first NBA championship to Denver a couple of years ago. 2 years ago, they won the first championship of Denver history with Michael Malone. I think he deserves at least to end the season, finish the season. I know there was some rumblings about him and Calvin Booth not seeing eye to eye. And in this case, I think unless Calvin Booth was trying to improve the team and was being forced by ownership because of revenues, and Denver being a small market was forced to not make the moves to continue, because I think that was one of the biggest issues. Michael Malone wanted them to you know retain those veteran players that they had, whether it's you know Kentavious Caldwell Pope or Bruce Brown, that they let go from their championship and play more of like the younger players. That's what Calvin Booth wanted. The younger players that they have, whether it's like Pickett, Stother, or any other young player. I can't remember every single name at the moment, but Calvin Booth wanted the young rookies that they drafted to get more playing time. While Michael Malone was like, "We have Nikola Jokic, the best player in the league right now. Let's maximum this window by having veteran presence around him. They already know how to play together." And I think this was one of the issues that they had. So unless the pressure is coming way above from the ownership group, then I think Calvin Booth should have been the one fired here, because again, you could see throughout the season when the major acquisition that they had was Russell Westbrook, who's been playing pretty well for them, besides one of really two bad games, super bad games. But I knew from the beginning that Nikola Jokic will have to play at a crazy level for them to have any chance of winning, because their depth on the bench has really, you know, become pretty pretty unsignificant, if I could use that word. It's really, they don't have a deep bench at the moment, and that is really affecting their performances, especially when a player like Jamal Murray goes down or Nikola Jokic goes down. This man has been having 60-point triple doubles and still losing games. It is insane. But again, that is a roster construction issue. I don't think that is a problem that Michael Malone should be held accountable for. Yes, you're giving him rookies, but if they're not ready or they're not performing, and the coach was already expressing his concern with them and wanted you guys to keep the vets that they won the chip with, you can't hold him accountable for that. And at least give him the respect of finishing the season. And then if you want to part ways with him, you can. But once again, unless it's a personal issue, I think it's really disrespectful to just get rid of the coach that made you or help you win your first championship. Get rid of him like that with 3-4 games left before the playoffs. So Denver Nuggets and Memphis Grizzlies and literally any other front office in the NBA, get yourself together and make sure things like that do not happen, because it's not a good look on your organization, honestly. And just to even add on to what I'm saying, in the last 5 years, guys, the 5 past NBA champion coaches in the past 5 years, only 2 of them still have a job with the team that they won the championship with. This is insane. Frank Vogel won in 2020 with the Lakers, fired. Mike Budenholzer, 2021 with the Bucks, fired. Steve Kerr, 2022 with the Warriors, he's still there right now. Michael Malone, 2023 with Denver, fired. Joe Mazzulla won last year with the Celtics, and he's still with them at the moment. But three of the last five NBA champion coaches have been fired by the team that they won the championship with. It's really hard to win a championship in the NBA, and I don't think after winning a championship, yes, they shouldn't just sit down and say I won a championship and there's nothing else to do, but they deserve some grace after accomplishing such a great task. So I think this is something that front offices in the NBA shouldn't be getting used to and should actually revisit and get better at, because this is really problematic in my opinion. And that's how you are able to differentiate a great front office and a great organization from average to poor run teams in the NBA. Last but not least, the tanking issue in the NBA. I think when it comes to tanking and teams deliberately sitting players out and losing games starting early January when they realized that okay they would not have it for this year. I think it's the main reason for that is the lottery system in play right now for the draft, the following draft. I think the NBA needs to change that system and reward playing time and teams with good records. You can't continue rewarding mediocrity by allowing the teams with the worst records to have the best odds for the lottery in the following draft. I think if I was the commissioner of the NBA or an advisor for the commissioner, for instance, or in within the league office, I think what they need to do is actually reward amongst the teams that are now making it to the playoffs. So amongst those worst teams, the team with the best record amongst those worst teams should be awarded with the number one pick in the draft. That is what is that going to do? That is actually going to help teams or force teams to continue playing the best players and the best brand of basketball possible until the last game of the season. They're not just going to be deliberately losing games because they know they have to win games to get the best record possible in order to get the number one pick. So it shouldn't be a lottery system anymore. It should be amongst those 10 teams that cannot make it to the playoffs. Or you could, hell, if you want, you could add the 4 teams from the play-in in there and reward the teams that make it through the play-in, but unfortunately don't make it to the playoffs. You could add them and they get the number one pick. So either way, but for now, let's just go with the 10 teams that do not even make it to the play-in tournament. I think amongst those 10 teams, you shouldn't be rewarding the worst team with the worst record with the best chances of getting the number one pick. So with my formula, for instance, right now if we look at the NBA standings, the 10 teams that are not in playing contention is the Phoenix Suns, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Spurs, the Raptors, the Nets, the Sixers, the Pelicans, the Charlotte Hornets, Utah Jazz, and Washington Wizards. With the model that they have right now, the Wizards and the Jazz, and I think the Hornets, because they are the teams with the worst records, they have the best odds at the number one pick next season. If we implement my suggestion, the number one pick will be the Phoenix Suns, because amongst those 10 teams, they are the one with the best record with the 36-45 record. So the Phoenix Suns will be the team that will have the number one pick in the 2025 NBA draft, for instance, if my suggestion was taken into effect. I think this rewards teams that are still trying to win even though they're having a bad season. And unfortunately, this season, for instance, the Suns do not have any pick in the draft. So if an exceptional situation like that happens, then you move to the second best record, which is the Portland Trail Blazer. Instead of them having the second pick, they will now be having the first pick. And that is just great because the Trailblazers is a young team with some great young talent, and you rewarding them from them being one of the worst team last season, you actually rewarding them now for getting way more wins this season and having a 35 win to 46 losses record. They automatically, because the Suns do not have any draft pick, will get the number one pick, and the Spurs will get the second pick, etc., etc. I think this method actually helps those teams, even though they're having a bad record, helps them and forces them to continue playing the best players and try to win these games instead of those, excuse my French, shitty games that we'd be having towards the end of the season where everybody is trying to sit the best players and think to get the worst record possible in order to have the best odds for the NBA, the upcoming NBA draft. So this is my suggestion to fix the tanking issue. And of course, I know I don't have any say, but hopefully this is something just food for thought, and hopefully we could see something be done about the tanking issue. And this wraps up this first episodes of the Mufasa Sports Club. Again, guys, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it within your community. Post some comments, reviews of what you think of what we discussed. I want to hear from you guys. And until next time, stay passionate, and I'll catch you guys on to the next episode. Thanks. Peace.